Hello, friends, and thank you for tuning into the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, co-sponsored by Monsanto. Monsanto is a collective of farmer-friendly scientists dedicated to transforming agriculture on this planet into something safe, exciting, and fun. Monsanto recognizes that for the past several million years, the agriculture and plant life on this planet hasn't really been doing its fair share of work. More than anything, Monsanto understands that vegetative life tends to be boring. Think about it. When you go on a hike, what's more dull than sitting down and watching the wind blow through non-genetically engineered plant life? It's annoying, a little sad, to watch the pathetic greenery flutter in the wind. It can't move. It doesn't sparkle. There's no wireless connection, and more than anything, a lot of that stuff is poisonous. It wants to kill you. Don't believe me? Go eat the red berries on the bush outside your house and see what happens when your liver melts through your anus down into your socks. It's not going to feel good, and it's going to make it so that you can't exist anymore. Are you still a fan of plant life? That's what Monsanto wants to know. Go roll in some poison ivy, and then send one of your complaint letters to Monsanto about how they're damaging the planet by trying to take control of the unruly vegetative life that up until this point has been doing everything it can to not get eaten by human beings. And sure, there's some plant life that has rolled over on its stomach and is letting us eat it, but that plant life doesn't taste that great. It's boring. It's not sugared. Taste some broccoli sometime. Go enjoy some delicious, non-genetically engineered green beans, and then send one of your complaint letters after you've tasted some of that bland, flavorless vegetative matter and enjoyed the constipation or indigestion that comes from eating too much greenery. Monsanto is dedicated to changing that and making plant life fun. Every day in the Monsanto laboratories, scientists are testing vegetative life, transforming the DNA from a dull, empty, useless helix into something that will turn your plants into the vegetative equivalent of a Chuck E. Cheese. We will have self-lubricating corn that's coming out. That's right, you heard me right. Monsanto is working on a new type of corn that you can enjoy at the table. What's more annoying than when you have to butter your own corn? Everybody knows that butter makes things taste better. Butter is one of the most delicious substances on this planet. If it's got butter on it, it's going to be good. You could put butter on a steel rod, and that steel rod is going to taste 6,000 times better than it tasted before. Corn? How does corn taste? All corn is a cracker, a butter cracker. Corn is just a delivery device to get butter in it. And corn, in its selfish and lazy evolutionary patterns, never created its own butter. It didn't do anything, really. It grows weird flaps around the side of it that you actually have to peel down, and then you have to go through the process of boiling the stuff just to eat what may be the most flavorless, useless, and annoying plant on Earth. Monsanto has grabbed corn, taken it to corn jail, and transformed corn into something that now will make family dinners fun like they used to be, or like they will be in the future. That's right. This corn is amazing. They actually sent me some of this corn. It comes pre-cooked, and you can select how much butter secretes from the corn by massaging the corn. That's right. The corn lubricates from your touch. So, family dinners, instead of this boring funeral service that involves eating crap food and pretending you're getting nutrition, family dinners now turn into a fun night where you can get some of that Monsanto corn, lay it out on the table, and everyone in the family can start stroking and rubbing that corn, and it will produce, after the right kinds of strokes, and if you rub it in the right way, this is part of the fun, is figuring out which way the corn likes to be rubbed. If you rub the corn in the right way, it will secrete some of the most delicious butter that you've ever tasted. And here is the other fantastic aspect of this butter. It is infused with completely safe pesticides, which means that farmers who have had to go riding up and down their boring corn rows spraying it with deadly poisons up until this point won't have to worry about anything, because as the wind blows through these genetically engineered cornfields, the corn will actually secrete a little bit of this pesticide-infused butter, keeping plants off, and more than anything, making it so that you can have at your table some delicious self unbuttered, self-buttering Monsanto corn. So guys, tell your chef, tell your local farmer, tell your family chef, tell your friends, tell anyone you come in contact with that you love Monsanto, and say to them, my eyes are turned to the light that shines behind all things. I have been granted dominion over all things. I shall conquer all things that creep and crawl and grow upon the earth, and all that which does not bring me pleasure I shall cast out and destroy. I bow to Monsanto. I touch the hem of the scarlet robes of Monsanto. I open my heart to Monsanto. All right, friends. Now I'm going to read to you from this book that I've discovered called You'll Be Perfect When You're Dead, the collected online writings of Dan Harmon. I don't know where you're going to be able to get this, but I went to there was a reading. A bunch of people were reading this last night, and I was blown away by how funny this writing is. So I'm just going to read to you one of his blogs called I'm So Fucking Hot. And it's from the book You'll Be Perfect When You're Dead. I'll have a link to where you can get this book on this episode of the podcast. I'm so fucking hot. August 14th, 2005. Dude, I'm so fucking hot and awesome. Whenever I walk into a bar, everyone sees me in slow motion. All the women want to stick their hands down my shirt and run their fingers through my earth sign coat. And I have to grab their wrist and say, take it easy, sugar. We got all night for that stuff. And then I just blow their minds with my knowledge of story structure until an appropriate song comes on the jukebox, at which point I leap to my feet and start shaking my ass. And I shake my ass so hard that quarters start flying out of it and everyone starts cheering and picking them up. But I shout out, take it easy, sugars. There's no such thing as property. And they're all like, holy fuck. He's so hot and smart and socialist. And they drop the quarters and we all start dancing together like in that Love is a Battlefield video, looking at the camera and shaking our shoulders. And I lead everyone outside into the street. And we're all dancing and cars are screeching to a stop and people are honking. But then my followers pull them out and they start dancing too. And everyone in the city starts dancing. And old ladies are throwing away their walkers. And black teenagers are dropping their handguns and doing the robot like black teenagers should. And the entire city of Los Angeles follows me across America. And everybody in every city we go through starts following us, snapping and dancing. And when we get to the Mississippi River, the people form a human bridge by drowning themselves and letting the others walk across their backs. And the government realizes we're headed for D.C., so they deploy tanks. But our bodies just gum up their treads and the soldiers get pulled out and they start dance marching with us toward the White House. And the Secret Service tries to shoot us all, but they can't. We just dance into the Oval Office and everyone locks hands in a tunnel and I come dancing in. And the president is like, what is the meaning of this? And I'm like, what is the meaning of piss? And I just start peeing all over the president. And he's like, you're peeing on me. And I'm going, yeah. Because you're human and you're accountable to humanity. And this is what the insides of a human being feels like. It's hot liquid. It's visceral. It's life. It's God. And you've forgotten all that. So now you get peed on. And then I say, get him up. And two of the black teenagers that were previously redeemed lift the president to his feet. And I say, this is for not protecting the people that pay your salary. This is for hurting the people stupid enough to trust you. This is for taking advantage just because you can. This is for telling people that they should sit in a cubicle in a black tower, letting them think that doing that would eventually pay off, and then just letting some fucking assholes that you pissed off fly airplanes through their families, through their Dilbert cartoons and bobbleheads, and wake me for the weekend coffee cups while you sit in a bulletproof bubble paid for with their unpaid labor. This is for lying to yourself, to them, to everyone. This is what happens to liars, and I fake like I'm going to punch him, and he cringes. But then I just kiss him on his piss-soaked cheek and walk away, back through the tunnel of humanity, and it closes behind me and absorbs me, and the president just falls to his knees and starts crying. And he says, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've done such a horrible thing. I've been so bad. It's the power. It changes you before you even get it, demands things of you. There's no such thing as doing a little bad to get into a position where you can do a lot of good. If you have to do bad to get into a position, then it's a bad position. And when you get into it, the devil is going to be on your call sheet, and he's going to have a list of things for you to do, and it never stops. You just get more and more evil. And I'm so sorry that I was born rich. I'm so sorry. Someone forgive me. And all the laws and all the money just turned to dust because humanity is advanced. We don't live in that world anymore. Everyone just acquires this innate and universal sense of priority. Everyone understands that people should just be good to each other, and the next 5,000 years are spent in peace, and they put my face on a stamp. That's how fucking hot and awesome I am. That's from You'll Be Perfect When You're Dead, Chapter 1. This is the collected online writings of Dan Harmon. They're all really good. He's a brilliant writer. It's awesome. Okay, now I'm going to play some crazy shit for you now. This was recorded from the road. I had to change the voice of the guy who was telling me the story. He requested I change his voice because he doesn't want people to figure out who he is. But this is somebody who was in Afghanistan. And if you listen very closely in the background, you can hear that robotic sound is someone using, I don't know what you call it, one of those voice boxes that you put against your throat to talk. Very, very strange night. Hi, everybody. Hello, everybody. It's me, Duncan Trussell. I'm at an empty bar in upstate New York talking with Jimmy Williams, a vet who's did some tours in Afghanistan, and I've asked him to tell me the weirdest thing that he saw in Afghanistan.
Thank you for having me. I love all of you.
Love you back.
So the weirdest thing I saw in Afghanistan, there's this thing called Man Love Thursday in Afghanistan. So when I got there and I heard about Man Love Thursday and I asked what it was, and somebody told me, oh, well, their Sabbath is Friday, and so like the men get together Thursday night and fuck each other, and then they pray for forgiveness Friday. So, obviously I was skeptical too, and I figured just like the Afghans did, this is something the American grunts made up to dehumanize the Afghan people even more, to facilitate the murder, the genocide, that much easier.
Do you think it's a genocide?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what did the people of if you believe the official story of 9/11, which I don't, what do the people of Afghanistan have to do with 9/11? Yeah, so why are we there? Why are we building a pipeline there? All sorts of questionable investments. Anyway, so I thought, it was just one of those things that grunts do. They make fun of the host nation peoples. Until I started, a month in and started doing patrols with the Afghan National Army and Afghan police. And they want to put the NATO forces, America basically, they want to put an Afghan face on all the presence patrols, to make the proletariat believe that their own security forces are taking the lead on their security operations for their communities, which, it's a thinly veiled bullshit propaganda thing to keep us distracted. So while they continue to spend more on defense spending and build that pipeline to get that natural resource out. Anyway.
Wait, what is the pipeline?
The pipeline is, it's a natural gas pipeline that bifurcates Afghanistan, and it goes through Karachi, Pakistan, into the water, I forgot the name of I think Caspian Sea. Yeah, it goes out to the Caspian Sea. And there we go. We can pump our gas and, light our homes or whatever. Right. And power our batteries through the minerals, like lithium. Anyway. The weirdest thing. So, we come up with an operation or a plan on what to do, let's say a practice patrol, and we'll, take that plan, we being the American soldiers, the infantrymen, we'll take it to our Afghan counterparts, their platoon leader, and their sergeants will get together and, tell them about this plan. What do they think of it, to get their input on it and make sure that they understand it enough to take the lead. And one day we try to get over to their side of the outpost because it's kind of segregated.
Yes.
We go to their side of the outpost. We knock on the door. No one answers, but it feels like people are in there. So me and my sergeants, we knock the doors open and man, let me tell you, they got dudes bent over, Afghan soldiers, the cherry ones, bent over, and the senior guys are running trains on them. This was on a Thursday night.
Wait, you walked in?
Yeah.
On like a swinger party.
Like a straight, all dudes, all soldiers, Afghan soldiers, just going at it, and like kind of reluctantly too. Like it didn't even seem like a lot of people were having fun. It was like a weird cultural initiation of some sort.
What did you do?
Our jaws dropped, and then they stopped fucking, and then like I basically, through my interpreter, told them, we'll be outside. Please stop this and come meet us outside. And so they came outside, their leader, and like pretended like nothing just happened, and denied the whole thing. And the next day we did the mission.
So there's some interesting news from the front that you probably won't hear on Fox News. The Duncan Trussell Family Hour is brought to you by one of the greatest t-shirt companies that exist on planet Earth. Sure Design t-shirts. God damn it, these shirts are soft. If you listen, they have this new translator where you can put it's a rather bulky gas mask-like steel device, very similar to that worn by Bane in the Batman movie. You strap one of these things to a baby when it's crying, and it will translate the baby's cries into a human language. And 9 times out of 10, if a baby's crying, it's crying because it's not swaddled in a Sure Design t-shirt. And the babies are screaming and crying out in the language of babies whenever they cry, not for their mother's breast, not for breast milk, not for the warmth of their mother's neck or hair, or for food, or whatever babies are commonly thought to be screaming about. Babies are screaming because they want their asses wrapped in a soft t-shirt from Sure Design t-shirts. Sure Design t-shirts. Why do babies want a t-shirt made from Sure Design t-shirts? Because these t-shirts are actually made with baby skin. That's right. They send out quadricopters through the different orphanages of Thailand, and they skin the very, very topmost layer of skin from babies. Nobody dies. Maybe it's a little uncomfortable for the baby, much like a light sunburn, but damn, it's worth it, because that baby skin weaves together to produce some of the softest shirts known to man. If you've got a baby and you want that baby to be happy, you want your baby to go to an Ivy League college, or you want your baby to grow up to be a professional wrestler or a successful career person, you got to wrap it in Sure Design. That's just the way it is. Go to SureDesignT-shirts.com. If you put my name in, you get 10% off. Buy one of these wonderful shirts so that you can wrap your sweet little dandelion doll in t-shirts that are actually made from Thai baby skin. SureDesignT-shirts.com. They're soft. Also, we're sponsored by Audible.com. Now, a lot of you out there like flop books. You like reading crappy, regular books that are made of paper. You enjoy reading that. But for those of you who have attention deficit disorder, much like I do, or for those of you who find yourself distracted, or for those of you who have to work in an office job where you have to pretend to be doing stuff when in fact you're just listening to podcasts, if you want to change from podcasts and you want to listen to a book, if you're interested in anytime a movie comes out based on a book, it's better to just read the book. Les Miserables, The Life of Pi, The Hobbit. All these are available at audible.com. And if you sign up for a trial membership by going to audibletrial.com/family hour, audibletrial.com/family hour, you can get one free audiobook. And then you can cancel your trial membership and you'll still have a free audiobook. So it's a great deal. And they send me $15. So it's a way for you to support the podcast. Also, if you're buying something from Amazon.com, we've got a portal at the website. What's called a portal. You click on this thing and buy whatever the thing is you're going to buy. Buy a Dyson hot and cold fan. I just bought one of those and it radically transformed my life. A super robotic heater. I've named mine Gary, and I pretend he's breathing on me at night. But obviously Amazon has everything known that has ever existed on Earth. You can buy it from Amazon. Buy your plutonium. Buy your bath salts. Buy your lubricants or whatever it is you're going to buy. But buy them by going through the portal at DuncanTrussell.com. And even if you're not going to Amazon, why not visit DuncanTrussell.com, post on the forum. If you're lurking on the forum, start posting, cowards, and check out the shop. We just got a new t-shirt design in, which I'm really quite fond of, and we got a bunch of posters there too. And much thanks to all of you who continue to support the podcast by donating, by posting on the message board, by giving us good comments on iTunes, or whatever it is that you're doing to participate in this podcast. Thank you. Hare Krishna. I love you. Okay, let's get this thing going. The guest on this podcast is a brilliant musician. He's one of my best friends on earth. He is in a band called the Holy Sons. He's in a band called Om. He's in a band called the Grails. He's always releasing albums and always producing some of the most incredible music that I've ever heard in my life. He's been on the Duncan Trussell Family Hour a few times. So everybody, please welcome back to the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, my sweet pal, Emil Amos. Emil Amos. All right, we're rolling. Holy shit, here we are. Duncan Trussell Family Hour with the ultimate Emil Amos.
I feel weird that I can't see you this time. It's better not to see each other, though, right?
Yeah, it's better because it saves bandwidth.
All right, buddy.
You know how hard it is for us to gaze into each other's eyes when we can't touch?
It's actually good because it keeps me from my mind from wandering.
Mine too, lover.
Because how many of these people do you do it Skype style with? Mostly you don't, right?
Well, no, actually the last one I did it Skype style, but usually I like it when people are here, but you can't do that all the time. But the last one I just did it regular, or rather Skype style. It depends, where people are. I've got this guy coming up, or I hope he's going to do it. I've been talking to this guy Wasserman, who is a Thelemite, and who runs a lodge in New York, like one of the big Aleister Crowley lodges. And I've been trying to get him on the podcast forever. I'm going to have to Skype with that guy because he's in New York.
Shit, I'm going to New York in 7 days for a month for no reason.
Just to go?
Yeah, it's something, I guess. It seems like in my life I've flirted with just the concept of moving, changing my perspective a little more than you have. You seem really like you've always seemed really like anchored in LA. Like you have no interest in moving, right?
I don't know. I think everybody who lives out here kicks it around a little bit. The idea of going somewhere more quiet, like somewhere up in the mountains or somewhere to retire and work on my nail bombs.
Are you that kind of guy? Are you a mountain dude?
Well, I like being up in the mountains a lot. Yeah, I love it. I love the feeling up there with the there's so much you miss in a city that your brain just completely forgets. It's like that. I think we've talked about this before, the difference between pigs that live in a farm and pigs that go out in the wild. You know about that?
I don't think we've talked about it.
Well, like a pig, a typical pink pig will, from time to time, escape from a farm and go out into the woods. And the strange thing that happens to these pink pigs when they go out in the woods is in a matter of a few months, they get bigger and they change colors because their environment has that much of an effect on them. When they're in a farm just getting slop thrown to them, they stay typical fat, snorting, domesticated pig. But out in the wild, they get tough and, I guess they become boars. I'm not sure, but they become dangerous out there.
That makes sense, I guess. We've got a cat and he just randomly attacks us viciously, thinking it's a game, and it seems clear if he just lived out in the wild, he would have these instincts that were designed in him, like routed better,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
making something live in a kind of cramped area is going to bring out all sorts of new neurosis or something.
Yeah, right. And that's this is the fantasy of the primitive man. Like if you were to somehow finally travel back to before electricity, the idea is you would come into contact with a being that was so different from you and so like wild and dangerous and magnetic that the odds are really good that he'd probably just kill you.
Where did you read that?
I didn't read it anywhere. I just think about it.
That's a funny ending there.
He would just be so simultaneously like repulsed and feel pity for you. It would be like coming in contact with a zombie or something. Like you would smell all wrong. You'd smell like soap and whatever antidepressants you'd been taking, and you'd be slow and fat. And like he'd think you were sick. He'd think you had some kind of disease. And
right.
Then
why would he? I'm just curious. Why would he kill you? Would he feel threatened or something? Or
I don't think he'd feel threatened. I think it would just be a kind of like the way a kid squashes an ant. Like, who's got time for that honky? Out in the wild primordial forest, suddenly some stinking, chemically soaked cesspool comes lumbering into your Garden of Eden. Where do you have a Wi-Fi connection, sir?
Well, certainly if you were, this is actually a pretty interesting analogy. But if you were holding him back in any way, he might sacrifice you for some like practical purpose. But it seemed like he'd be a more practical type of person, and in fact, maybe like he'd be a hustler of the wild in a way. Like he would sort of like he'd be doing whatever he had to do to get by, and then if you fit into that equation, he might use you. You know what I mean?
Right. He might use you. He might enslave you.
It depends. I mean, we're talking about a pretty clever Neanderthal or whatever.
Well, I mean, that idea of the Neanderthal, that's a weird idea. I mean, I don't know when they say those beings were supposedly running around, but this thing about the wells that they've just discovered in Germany, have you heard about these?
No.
9,000-year-old wooden wells. They're the oldest wooden wells ever found, and, they show pictures of what these things look like. They're beautiful interlocking planks that have like, they kind of remind me of Lincoln logs. But, I was looking at those and I'm thinking, I'm surrounded by technology, but if I was in the woods, there's no fucking way I'm doing that. Like I have no idea how I just have been trying to hang curtain rods for the last 2 hours. I've destroyed my walls. I might as well get a new house.
Well, I mean, the world would look totally different to you, I think, if you had like all the time in the world on your hands, and you had an idea like to maybe build something in competition with the pyramids, or like your spiritual outlook was somehow, it was a little bit more free to wander with like your lifespan. Whereas now it's like, clearly there's not enough time in the day to feel the amount of information and potentialities coming in. But maybe you would build a will if you didn't have, all these distractions.
Well, I mean, I certainly would give it a shot, but the reason I would build it was because I'd seen on a website that 9,000-year-old people had done it, and it works. But those people, who'd fucking figured that shit out? Like somebody's like, oh, let's just dig a hole. I have an idea. Let's dig a hole and put boards around the side and capture water. It's like, it's just strange to think about that stuff. I mean, it's this idea that it's kind of that, I guess it's considered a Stoic idea that nothing really changes.
Yeah.
Like the book of Ecclesiastes, I think it's Ecclesiastes or something, that really like, everything's already been done, kind of like you're listening to the voice of wind coming out of some hole and it's talking.
I kind of especially the older I get, the more I actually feel that way about the spiritual reality of the universe. But I don't agree with that in any sort of like technical, tangible, earthbound way or whatever. I mean, nothing tangible. But I think that spiritually everything is pretty much laid out in the cards, chemically in the universe.
Chemically?
Well, like I don't think that the essential ingredients of the universe are going to morph into something entirely different than what they really consist of since the beginning, which is kind of a really ridiculous thing to say, since the beginning of everything is supposed to be a morphing of the original ingredients. But like,
well, yeah, you're dealing with, what's that called? I was just talking about this with a friend of mine. There's what is it? Is that the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which is just because something happens 16 trillion times doesn't mean it's going to happen 16 trillion and one times?
I don't know. That's interesting now.
That there's like some small, infinitely small percentile chance that everybody on the planet is suddenly just going to turn into chickens. Or some ultimate absurdity is going to happen, and this is the kind of the fool. This is the dream of the fool. Because the fool is always lashing out at these boring old monolithic people who are kind of shuffling in that circular, running the well, like when Conan had to push the well, or when you see donkeys having to push like a pump in a circle. Like the fool is the one who always like sees that happening and recognizes how absolutely absurd and stupid it is, and then starts jeering at them and screaming at them. And the ultimate revenge of the fool would be that some massive shift would happen that's so incredible that it just brings everybody back to like a knowledge of their absurdity and some kind of humility.
Yes. Most New Year's I spend pretty bored and kind of rejecting the idea that it's a holiday or something, but I don't know what it is. I think it must be something to do with the background of what's going on in my life or something, but today I feel like there's something kind of like not so good in the air. I don't know what it is.
Oh, I feel the same way, dude. I don't know. I think it's just, I've been thinking about that, and I keep one thing in me that I'm annoyed with right now is that I've like always been superstitious about the number 13.
I was born on the 13th, but keep going.
Oh, well, then God damn it. Maybe okay, then forget that because something good came out of it. But there is this feeling of like, I don't know what it is, but yeah, something has been kind of like gnawing at me today in a really dark, creepy way. Yeah, like it's really strange. I don't know what it is. Like, it's hard.
It does seem weird to celebrate tonight or ironic because like everything in the news and everything people have been talking about for the past month, 2, 3 months has been like just apocalyptic.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's for sure. They definitely have got the terror ovens. They've got the depression boilers on high for some reason. That's for sure. With the kids getting shot up and this goddamn endless fiscal cliff crap and these old stale crackers yapping about the inevitable recession that's going to be triggered and all this shit. It does definitely seem gloomy, for sure. Do you think that do you ever think about the idea that time itself fluctuates according to like specific currents, and sometimes time bubbles or turbulence springs up in the flow of time that manifests in these kinds of catastrophes and social disruptions, and then at other times the river of time smooths out and that manifests as these temporary moments of peace?
Well, that doesn't seem like it has to be theorized. It just seems to be true on an individual level and collective, I guess. But you can probably find evidence for anything on some piece of the globe at any moment, at any time, to support, some idea that everything is evil or the opposite. You know?
Well, man, the problem is it's like whenever I get into these positions, see, this is something that my therapist told me. This is one of like the big hammer to the heads moments in my life where I was like kind of like talking like this to my therapist. And he's
Would you go once a week?
I don't go anymore, but this is when I was going. And he's like, everything that you're saying is you're in victim mode. Because you're sort of, there's the outside world and then there's you, and the outside world you've decided is against you.
Totally.
And so because you've decided the outside world is against you and that you don't have and we didn't really say that, but it seems like if you get gloomy, it's usually because you feel a little overwhelmed by the phenomena of the outside world. And that's considered victim mentality. And so it's like the job is like what lazy people do. And certainly, I mean, me, when I say that, is like when this shit when I start getting down or gloomy because I've been watching the news too much or thinking too much in the wrong directions, I won't even attempt to like do the things that I know you can do to get out of that. Sometimes I'll just let myself go into it really deep. It always ends up with like jerking off 5 times and listening to Elliott Smith until finally I'm like, what are you doing? And then you snap out of it, but I think that's the kind of the mental exercise. Like, no, of course there's something to fucking celebrate. There's always something to celebrate. You just decide that there's something to celebrate. You don't.
That's what Charles Manson is doing right now.
What? Celebrating or jerking?
Jacking off and listening to Elliott Smith at the same time.
Oh man! How much would you pay?
Every day I watch documentaries on people who kill, and it sounds cliche, but it's just like it's sort of it's like my relaxation addiction. It's like when I take a break from work or try to go to bed, I just watch mysteries on people who kill, and I was thinking just last night. I was thinking about the pain of a prisoner, especially somebody who's like been accused of murder and didn't do it. Because I was watching a thing on a guy who'd been in jail for 27 years and had obviously not done it. And it seems like the labyrinth of mental processes you'd be caught in, they're kind of the same as what your therapist is just saying about the temptation to go into victim mode, is this feeling that ultimately that the world doesn't give a shit about you, which is true, and if you're locked in a cell and you're literally looking out the bars out at the rest of the world, and you can follow that route emotionally. You can think, I'm in here, I didn't do this crime, and I'm left behind by the entire world because literally the world couldn't give a shit about me.
Yes.
And it's like a feeling of being unloved, of being sort of excommunicated or alienated. And you can follow that route, and clearly most people probably would in that situation, or you in whatever situation, whatever luxurious modern situation you're in, or you can understand that that's a mental process, and that's a hallway of thought or something that you don't have to go down, and you can resist that temptation for whatever weird impulse, probably narcissistic, that even makes you, choose that script or something. But anyway, it does seem like your therapist is onto something that you can choose to access that or not, right?
Well, yes. Well, that is the ultimate thing, is you choose. Now, I get really confused. I've been reading this Chogyam Trungpa, and he's this Tibetan Buddhist, and he kind of says, it feels like, and I don't understand it clearly enough, you'd probably have to study it for a long time, but he seems to be raising an eyebrow at the idea of being like, okay, let's get positive. We're going to climb out of the cesspit and we're going to dance around because it's a beautiful life. You only get one life. We used to be stars. We're made of stardust. Everybody hug each other. Now, he sees that as a kind of exertion, a kind of unnatural exertion that is actually an escapist mode to try to not assimilate the tunnel that you're talking about into your being. And that the beginning phases of his form of Buddhism is that you go, instead of trying to like do the pull up, I've been snared by this shit for a while. I actually just stopped thinking about it because I decided I'd rather do absurdist exertions into the positive than like dabble in something I didn't fully understand. But his idea is that you have to be fully in that dark place for a long time, and that this is the fertilizer that you're going to grow your realization from. But until you spend time in that place fully, then you're just doing this kind of like, like when you see somebody trying to balance on a balance beam that's too small, and then they are going to fall no matter what. So I don't know, man. It's a choice. Ultimately, you get to decide what you want to do. I know. I mean, it's pretty logical. I'm far more productive when I don't feel like shit. I'm far more productive when I manage to clamber out of world news land and determine my own sense of what kind of dimension I'm living in. And this is, I think, the essence of real magic, is learning to identify rarefied mood states and then making yourself feel those mood states with the intention of gaining certain results in the material world.
Yes, I guess. I don't know. I'm like, I gave my life to art, so the ritual, the daily life of making things, sort of project-based things, is like, you never exist in like a suspended state of elation. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, there's always something to do. That's your, I mean, it's probably a metaphor for life in a way, but it's all your responsibility, to pull this project through. And all of its potential faults, or like leaky spots at the floorboard of the boat, so that this thing is kind of going down unless you save it. And that, I guess, that particular way of life doesn't seem, it's almost like, staring, sort of like he's saying, it's like constantly staring at not the negative side of life or anything like that, but sort of like the potential to disintegrate if you fall off the balance beam or something. So that keeps you focused, like militantly on the job at hand, and in a sense, I think that's really kind of what life is like. You have to fight to keep your discipline. There's no way your discipline is going to just, come to you out of thin air, and so in terms of happiness, maybe your ability or your wish to kind of actualize it through like maybe bringing it about, or like some sort of pattern thinking, or just focusing, that's still the struggle to stay on the balance beam, and nobody's ever going to say, well, don't try or anything. I think he's more just saying that it's not going to come to you without the balance of it being work,
Right. That I mean, it's certainly, he can't be advocating just like, just go find some fucking heroin in a bucket and you'll get enlightened eventually.
Oh yeah. It sounds like he's just saying like, there's a larger balance to suffering, and then sort of, redemption or knowledge that comes from it, that you'll never cheat that system. You know what I mean? You
won't. And dude, the when you were talking about the prisoner looking out the bars and realizing that the world is passed on, and all the varieties of people in their own kind of situations that are mirrors of that. I had this, like, when I first found out about this fucking cancer, I was like, and the test hadn't come back, and I wasn't sure what it was going to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really getting to experience in a mild way, because there was some real hope. But I was getting to experience kind of like a kind of very light version of the condemned person.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm gonna, you know, I was easy. It was like not so much a fantasy to go into that place. Like, yeah, you could die in a few months, depending on where the shit spread, because you know you hear about that all the time. So I'm driving in my car, kind of like on the way to the doctor, and looking up at the sky, and there were planes flying over. And it was a beautiful blue day and cars driving everywhere, blue sky. It was pretty. It was a pretty day. And man, there was this incredible moment of like, oh, awesome. This shit just is going to keep rolling on. You know, like once you leave, this thing just keeps going. And somehow in that, there was this moment of tranquility. That was really nice. Like, it was like, oh God, this is, you know, it's kind of like, how much suffering comes from the idea that you really have a huge impact in the world. You know, that's that stoic idea of like, come on, you, no matter what it is that you are accomplishing.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And that's probably how that prisoner was, sort of maybe rerouting his ego as he grew older, you know, as he was 15 or 17 and then became an old man. Maybe he seemed really like a happy, well-adjusted guy. And maybe it's because he was sort of at peace with this idea that he had no real larger responsibility to the world, that he just needed to face each day and keep living towards, you know, whatever, you know, justice was hopefully coming, you know.
Yeah. And there's no, I mean, or, you know, the ultimate justice that's coming, of course, is that you know, this is, if life is a caterpillar, then for humans, the butterfly is dirt. And that's the, you know what I mean? And this idea that I've been toying around with in my head, I realize at first, on paper, when you say those things, it sounds, for a lot of people, it rubs them the wrong way, because it sounds fatalistic, and it sounds like, for some people, like, you know, I'm just working on this new material. I was on stage last night, and I've been working on this new cancer material, and after the show, this angry lesbian walked by me, and she goes, "That was awful in the best way possible." It's like the most passive aggressive thing ever. And I was thinking, like, I wonder why she thinks it was awful, because it was good. It did good. People were laughing, and then I realized, oh, I know, she thinks it's awful because she probably doesn't want to think about death or her own mortality.
Yeah, that always seems like a pretty, like, super simplistic complaint. Like, you know, like, it's like saying there was an ugly part in that movie, and I just think people shouldn't look at things like that. It's just like, well, you've got a long way to go then. If you haven't realized that that's part of life and you have to integrate with that shit, that you can't just deny its existence, you know.
Have you integrated with that?
In which way?
Like, do you think that you're, because you seem like you're like you're probably the smartest person I know. Do you think that do you feel like you've come to terms with the fact that you're going to die in a real way?
No, I think, I don't know. The way my personality is, it's like Taoism was sort of like saved my life or something. It was like the best thing that ever happened to me. But the more that I kind of like gave myself fully to just like wherever the water goes down the hill, it seemed to feed back into other parts of my personality that were not like maybe very strong, or like, so I'd get in situations where I needed to like speak up or say no to someone, and I couldn't do it because I was just so fully comfortable just like going with the way things were going. And so there are aspects of my personality that are like, I think in general, like really healthy and can tolerate things that I've never seen other people be able to tolerate, which I think is really, really beneficial in difficult situations. But I think that there's other things that I just can't process. And sometimes, like, I guess death is like something that I'm not able to really grasp. And I'm not sure if that's a profound thing, because it's like, I don't care about it. And I don't really, in a sense, I don't think it's really even real, in the way that you can't even wrap your head around what it is. It's the absence of all this stuff. And so, in a way, I kind of wonder if part of the weak aspect of my personality is involved with that, because I don't know if I'm unable to feel emotional about certain things, and I kind of like drive it out of my mind, or if I'm avoiding something, or if I just actually know what matters, which is life, and that I don't really want to think about sort of the fantasy or representation of death. Death as sadness, I find really kind of, for lack of a better word, like pathetic. Like I think it's stupid to be sad about that.
Absolutely. There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita: the wise mourn neither for the living or for the dead. And I fucking love that. That is just like taking a long, hot piss right in the face of the sentimentalists. And I fucking love it, man. It's like, just fucking drop the goddamn drama about the fucking thing. That to me is is so fucking annoying, man. The whole maudlin goddamn when people start twinkling out and you get to decide how you're going to do your fucking dive off the diving board into infinity. And some people want to do a belly flop, or just like have like a nice gout of diarrhea as they go plunging into nothingness. And it's really fucking annoying. But simultaneously, you can't really like get to it. You can't be like, well, look, you should die the way I think you should die.
Yeah.
It's like
that's a big part of why I've always sort of rejected a lot of those ways of thinking, is because it's just as simple as when your mom tells you to now say thank you, and you were just about to say thank you when you're like 10 to like a stranger that gave you a toy or something, and you're just about to say thank you, but then your mom says in front of them, now say thank you, and you're like, well, I can't even say it now. Like this whole thing looks so ridiculous. You're talking about the representation of an emotion that I'm supposed to now, through this, ritualistic, manner-based, culture, supposed to say that I mean this, but I don't mean it, but now it just becomes a gesture for the sake of meaning what it stands for, and you've already like tipped off that like I'm just like filling in the blanks. It just seems like from an early age I was like, I had no interest in gesturing to other people so they would maybe believe that I felt the way that they're supposed to think that I'm supposed to feel. Like I just never cared,
It's so fucking annoying. God damn it. So what's worse than when you find yourself held captive by a sentimentalist watching the news, and they start, like whatever. It's just kind of like, I was in an elevator recently, and there was a lady in a wheelchair, and the lady in the wheelchair backed up and slightly rolled over the foot of this middle-aged Asian lady, and the lady starts like, oh my God, oh God. And people in the elevator are like, are you okay? Oh, are you all right? Should we stop? What should we do? She's like, no, I'm fine. Oh, I'm fine. She acted like somebody had just gut shot her. Like somebody had walked up and blasted her with bird shot right in her fucking stomach. The amount of like she was like putting on this grand show. And then she walks out, she limps out of the elevator, and I watch her as she turns the corner, totally walking normally again. Everything's fine when she's not
This fucking Kaiser Sose in the elevator.
But that fucking thing where it's basically like people are just waiting for phenomena to say action. A specific type of phenomena is the director of their life. And the moment it's like action, they're like, oh, can you believe what happened to those children? What are we going to do? What are we going to do about guns in this country? And what kind of world are we living in? It's like,
oh man, I find those people to be probably some of the most entertaining people to watch. People like the ultimate, kind of quiet pedestrian hypocrite. I find them just fucking fascinating, man.
Yeah, I do too. Well, I mean, it's it's like what are they, robots? Are we robots?
One of my favorites is when you're like at the airport in line for security, and like the old lady, or like the post office, the old lady that cuts in front of you like blatantly, and then as you're kind of like trying to feel out, like, well, do I just kind of like take my place back, like the next time we pick up our bags and move forward? And if you kind of hint at it, like she looks at you like horrified, like you're not trying to get in front of me, are you?
Right.
And you're like, oh my fuck, like you're fucking insane. you just did this to me, and you're acting like I'm literally a criminal,
Yes, that's exactly right. So that's it. That's the thing. So it's like you see these people and they're just going around setting traps for themselves, and then anytime they're lucky enough to have that trap triggered, they get to go through this seizure. And the seizure is the series of actions that make up the predominant modality of their life, and that's victim modality. And it's like
that's I think maybe some sort of very early experience with needing attention from in the family, and realizing that maybe if you even if you do something bad and even get spanked or something, at least that you're getting paid attention to, or something really confused that gets built into your the system of give and take with your loved ones or whatever.
Yeah, it's like that one day that you come home and your little brother's gotten his hand chewed off by a pit bull, and you got to go to the hospital, and suddenly your parents start treating you like a king or something because you wrapped your brother's hand in gauze, or you know what I mean? Like some awful adrenaline fueled event gets you a reward chip from the universe, and then from then on you're trying to repeat that reward, or looking for like high crisis situations where you can relive that sweet. You're chasing the fucking dragon. It's like no different than when somebody boots heroin for the first time and gets that sweet fucking, what I imagine to be an incredible euphoric rush, and then you're always chasing after that, which is why this is the big question, man. This is like, I'm working on this fucking, I've really been studying the Bhagavad Gita a lot lately, and really getting into this notion of like the gunas, you know about that?
I can't remember.
It's like the mode of ignorance, the mode of passion, and the mode of goodness are these three modalities that their interchange and the way that they're balanced in each individual person determines how that person will act and how that person will behave. And there's not a speck of freedom. It's all automatic. Even if you think you're free, you're not. You're just this sort of bouncing back and forth of these like modalities, and some people are more in the modality of ignorance, which is kind of like deep victim mentality, and some people are more in the mode of passion, which is like being ambitious and trying to make a shitload of money, and some people are more in the mode of goodness, which is being Mother Teresa or Gandhi. But still, they're all automatons, and just meat that's going through these it's kind of like Gurdjieff, but then intersecting with this is this universal consciousness, or this kind of eternal thing that animates all matter. And that thing is purely free and, completely unhindered by anything that's happening, this little like brief fleck where it's for whatever reason decided to focus in on a pink wriggling monkey ancestor for 60 years. It's not touched in any way at all. And it's fascinating to me, that idea of like, fuck, man, what are you doing that really is free? What do you think? Do you think you're an autonomous being? Or do you feel like when you say I've given my life to art and all the different work that you put into these incredible albums you release, are these also a form of seizure, just in a better way? Then, you know what I mean? Is this just another version of what these dark sentimentalists are doing? Are we all slaves, Emil?
Well, I think that as that monk might have been implying, like, there is such a thing as freedom of choice in theory, but the ultimate like prizes of life, which I don't think are as simple as people generally accept, meaning the basic goals of having a family and a good job and stuff. The ultimate prizes of life they can't come to you so easily. You can't, this planet and everything that's going on, that's so obviously fantastic and kind of almost improbable. It's also improbable that everybody might be geniuses, and experience like the magic of life all the time, So there has to be some form of mental discipline that leads you to peak experience, and so for me, I use art. Hopefully everybody has something that they care about, because I would say the worst state of mind to be in is not knowing why you should care about anything or not caring about anything. For me, that's the most miserable state of mind. But through art, I mean, I can kind of, I'm in a relationship with the universe, meaning that kind of most powerful current, or whatever you called it, of creativity, the spirit of creativity, and the spirit that energy there that you can access. I'm kind of in a divining relationship with it, so that I'm really working with the elements. I'm with them. You know what I mean? I'm not separate from them. So that experience, that high of feeling like I'm actually alive, is not like getting my hair done and wearing a nice dress and having an awesome phone and sipping on my Starbucks thing and the weather's nice that day. It's not that, unless for some weird reason, that person is somehow perfectly engaged. I wouldn't call that a creative synergism, but maybe it's a simulation of being happy or being engaged. But in the situation with art that I'm talking about, it's that I'm making myself very vulnerable to listen to how something wants to be, how something wants to come together in its own shape. And I am trying to just nudge it into its existence, which is, I think, sort of the closest you can get to the whole feeling of God, working in tandem with creating the earth, or or the earth existing from this relationship with the most creative entity or the creative spirit of the universe. So you're sort of opening yourself and getting into this state of mind that is, you're bringing something out of nothing in a sense, and you're watching the whole thing happen, and you're it's not like the narcissistic thing that I think people assume art is about. But when you get into that process, you start to understand the mechanism and kind of the cogs like behind the curtain of the universe in certain ways, if you really let yourself go deep enough, which is a really, really sacrificial kind of painful process, because you have to give up all your ideas of what something is going to be and give yourself and your body to the facilitation of something that wants to exist as you help it. I think Sartre said something like, he was asked, are you bummed out that you used amphetamines for years and destroyed your body? And he said, no, I'm really glad that I sacrificed my body to write these massive volumes of philosophy. I think at the time it was the Dialectic of Reason or something. And he was just glad that he'd ravaged his body to sacrifice it for this thing, this ideal that he had imagined could be true, and he wanted to facilitate into existence, So I think there's this sort of it's a deeper level of engagement and vulnerability that you can go to, and I hope that all people have that in their life in different areas. I think a lot of people treat walking down the street like that, or their job or their family or their relationships like that, but I kind of have a fear that they don't have this deeper engagement with that creative spirit, if that makes sense.
Yes. Oh man, that's so inspiring and beautiful, everything you just said. I think that when you initially hear it, you hear things like this and you think, oh, well, if you're not an artist, you might think, oh, I should become an artist so I can have this experience. And that is a mistake, I think, because I as you were saying, just walking down the street, there's so many different ways that you can access that and become, I've heard the term co-creator. This kind of also reminds me of, what's it called? Process theology. The idea that this is sort of that God is the sum total of everything, and the sum total of everything is this crest of the wave that we're on right now, and that through your actions, you're actually part of the unfolding process of this waking up massive event comprised of all matter and energy and thought in the universe. So yeah, I think the other thing that you said that's worth noting is how when you do come in contact with that feeling of being an expression of that force, then worldly things definitely become, like plastic fruit. It's less interesting to you when you get caught up in it. And there's also something frightening about it. But what about, how do you manage to not feel like you're going crazy when you're making stuff? You know what I'm saying? Like that courageousness or that sense of like, fuck, I'm just going to put this out there, even though it's totally the opposite of what I thought I was going to do. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, well, I was going to bring that up when you first called, because I've been literally going crazy, like in a functional state of schizophrenia for like a week or two. And you can ask my girlfriend, because all she hears me is me screaming from the next room.
Screaming?
Well, yeah, I can't. This album is killing me. I was supposed to turn it in last night. Now I'm turning it in today, I guess. But this album is just fucking killing me because I cannot I can't get it to sound the way that it wants to sound. And I know as I'm hearing it, like, that it's not what it wants to be in these subtle ways where, like, if I played it for you, you would have absolutely no idea what I was talking about. I would play you a section of 5 seconds and you go, sounds great, man, put it out. And because that's what everybody always says. And for whatever reason, there's the amount of the potentialities, like the thousands and thousands of options that are within 5 seconds of rhythmic data are so like, I'm so aware of what this 5 seconds wants to be, that and for some reason I'm not able to nudge it into where it wants to go, and the deadline's here and I can't turn it in. Like, philosophically, I refuse to turn it in. I mean, I guess it's what most people refer to as, like, perfectionism, but I don't think people even perfectionism is, like, not the right word. I don't know. Have you ever been in a circumstance where, see, I was trying to think of a parallel in comedy, like, where you might, there's a couple different ways I could try to find a parallel, but a parallel where you're trying to find, like, the right series of syllables that are, like, so efficiently direct and the point, or funny, or that hit, this sort of secret chemical target of making someone laugh, whatever that is. But it's just, you're basically, like, you picture somebody like Mozart on his deathbed, and he's about to die and he can't get this sequence of 3 notes to fall in the right rhythm, and it's totally maddening. It is insanity. It's just a functioning level of, it's not like it's self-destructive, but it's not like I'm bleeding.
Why would you say that that's self-destructive?
Well, because I'm going deaf. I'm staying up all night, like every night until the sun comes up, trying to get it where it needs to go. I mean, it is self-destructive. It's my ears are, like, getting completely ravaged, and they're, like, the most important things that I probably have,
do you think that this is is it always like this, or is this just a particularly difficult album?
I think you ask yourself that almost every record. You're like, I don't remember it being this bad last time. And it's a state of going crazy because you've just listened. I want to try to explain this so that, like, it's not super boring to someone who's not interested in it, but, like, maybe as a metaphor for anything else that other people do. But you've listened to this thing for probably about a year. I'd say a lot of times I've worked on the same material for, like, say, a year long. And so you've been living with it and listening to it in your car in different environments and dealing with it as you're kind of trying to get something that's a rough approximation of your imagination into something that sounds completely sort of normalized for the consumer, I guess, so that when they hear it, they don't find it awkward. They're like, oh, this sounds like good music. But that means so many different things. But it kind of just sounds like a record, a record that someone puts on. Because where records begin in the mind of the maker, it's just a stew of chaos. It doesn't matter if you're Billy Joel or Keith Jarrett or Dr. Dre. When a record begins or Star Wars begins, it's just a bunch of chaotic, ridiculous thoughts that are not connected at all, that have no theme inside of this person, and you have to massage them for a year to 10 years or whatever, depending if it's a film, into a form that someone can digest and actually believe in, like, oh, this is coherent, and that as Orson Welles says, is basically the art of manipulation and a form of magic, you know?
Yes. Yeah, it's a you know what it reminds me of, man? It reminds me of it's like you've got a radio receiver and you can hear underneath all the whirling, swirling static. You can hear this thing that nobody else can hear. And you've got to decode it or figure out a way to depixelate it so that it becomes clear. I think Stephen King calls it a kind of excavation, a process of excavation where there's the bone.
That's totally right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I think that people maybe trip themselves up when they're trying to when they're trying to get into this life of art or trying just to create something for the first time. I think this is something that trips people up because they imagine that there's already these kinds of preformed stories or songs or paintings inside of them, and then when they finally hit the laboratory and are met with the initial resistance that's an inevitability, they think, oh, well, then I'm not meant to do this. And they give up. And some people aren't meant to do it because you have to love it. You have to be the way that you are right now, which is I have to create this thing to the point where I will damage my ears for it. And some people are like, well, fuck that, man. I'm not doing that. That sucks. Let's go walk the dog. That's not my thing. So there is a specific sort of person that's made for this. When I hear you talk about this stuff, it sounds to me from an outsider's perspective as a desirable place to be in. From the outside, it sounds so fun to be that frenzied over making something and so it sounds so beautiful. And so to me, it seems like such a lucky state to be in. But where you're at, it's just a sweaty, I can remember, when I was trying to finish up this pilot for Comedy Central and we were hitting the deadline and I didn't like it very much. And we had to stay up. At one point I had to stay up I don't know, man. We had to work on it literally from 9 a.m. to 9 a.m. the next day. So that to the point where we were snorting Adderall, just to stay awake in the editing process, just to make it perfect as we could get within this time limit. And it was devastating. It really was devastatingly painful.
Yeah, I remember one time when I joined Ohm, we made this 7-inch where we'd booked this time for 2 days in the studio, and as far as I remember, we'd never really played together or something, and we just assumed that we would just whip up this 7-inch worth of material because Sub Pop had invited us to do this kind of classic singles club release, and so we're like, fuck it, let's do this. And we got there and we realized how much work we had put ourselves in the position of doing, because we had to spiritually find the center of what this music wanted to be, and that process just takes time, and it doesn't obey deadlines at all. And I remember I went back in, I think the next week, to mix it with this guy who's the sweetest studio dude, and I think I went in at 7 at night, and this was one song, and I didn't leave the studio until this is I literally was slave driving this dude, and I didn't know I was going to do that, but just this side of my personality came out where I was like, oh no, this isn't right, this is not right, this is fucked up, it sounds like shit. Just little, rhythmic things. I didn't get out of there until 9 a.m. the next morning, and you should have seen this guy's face. I mean, he had no idea that he was going to work into the next day when the sun came up. It just so happened that he lived upstairs, so I guess he kind of just went with it. But you should have seen this guy. I mean, he was just destroyed. But I couldn't care. I mean, I did care, but we had to finish this thing. It was just, that's what we had to do, you know? And so we couldn't stop. We couldn't do what you said, which is exactly what most people do. They're like, this isn't fun. Like, let's go, like, get a beer. It's like, you can't, you know, so you go down a tunnel of potential madness, and you're kind of walking on eggshells, like, to a certain rhythm, to not let yourself start to believe that you've gone crazy, that you're going on the path, and you step off the path constantly, and you fuck up constantly, and you make everything worse for yourself, which means hours and hours more work. But you have to keep going with the idea that with more work, you will come back onto the right path. You know, it's like being lost in the wilderness, you know?
Yeah, this is another thing that this guy Chogyam Trungpa said, which I love, is he says, don't do this. That's the first thing he says, is like, don't start down this path. If you can avoid it, just don't. Because you've got to go to the end once you get in there. And there's no choice. The door. It's like you truly are lost, and you have to wander through that wilderness. And it's I think, again, probably the difference between a lot of people and people like you, is that when they get lost in the woods, they don't know that that's a natural thing to happen, or a normal thing to happen, or that that's actually a sign that they're moving in the right direction. They think that that's the worst place to be, and so they throw up resistance to that event, whatever it happens to be, and never really go below the surface in their lives. But I think a lot of people listening to this very much want to experience what you're experiencing right now. And I know many of them do experience it, because a lot of artists listen to this, a lot of musicians listen to this, but I'm thinking of the group of people hearing you talk about how you hope that people have something like this thing that you're doing. And I'm thinking of, like, a lot of them don't. I mean, they really don't. They don't know what they want to do, or they haven't quite figured out what is the way that they want to access the elemental forces of the universe, as you put it. And I think that that's not a bad thing, but I wanted to ask you, what would you say to those people? Like, what's something that they could do to get closer to figuring out exactly what they can do to experience this kind of madness that you're talking about?
Well, the first thing I think of is that, like, I'm trying to say this without sounding too particularly, like, pessimistic, but you know, a lot of the people that I guess have started down that road that you're sort of talking about, of being an artist or a musician or something, if this makes other people feel any better, you know, that maybe don't currently make art or music, like a lot of those people that do haven't even begun the actual process. You know what I mean? Like, music is in one sense, in one dimension, music is sound, and a sound that people have heard before and is identifiably called music, and soothes them, and largely fits into a pretty strict mold of mood control, and sort of, kind of like something that brings, like, a light mood, or takes your mind off problems, you know, or something. And music, to me, doesn't represent that at all. You know, it really actually has nothing to do with sound in certain ways. It has a lot more to do with what it means. So all these states of mind that I'm talking about can be gone to in various ways, you know, using really anything that you commit yourself to completely. And I think it's worth saying that a lot of people that maybe even spend their life and have incredibly successful careers being artists are in fact not artists.
Right.
Now, just because you play bass in a band doesn't necessarily make you an artist. You know, just because you doodle and get paid fucking monumentally more than me doesn't mean you're an artist. You know, I mean, that you can be part of a process of facilitating art, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going into this kind of this Bermuda Triangle of creation or whatever we're talking about, you know. Just because you can play in time, you know, or whatever doesn't mean that you have that's it, you're done. I mean, you see a lot of musicians or comedians or actors, they have a small bit of success and you can kind of see that they are literally sort of done. You know, that's they think that was it, you know. But I'm saying I really don't think that most of those people have even taken the first step down this path, because there's so much deconstruction that needs to be done to really start the process of what do I have to say, you know. That you have to deconstruct everything, and most people, you know, they repeat things that other people have done because they feel that sounds good, that is music, you know. But if you haven't actually gone through a rigorous you know, years long process of individuation through whatever you're going through, whether it's music or painting or whatever, if you haven't gone down that path of say a Jungian sort of individuation, then you really haven't begun, you know, or whatever. So it could be, but that could. Go ahead. I just want to say
that's not having not begun it can be a good thing.
That's kind of what I'm saying is like for people that look at other people who have had success, it doesn't really mean that they are even a step ahead of you in any way, you know. And for people like me and you know, I think we've had to kind of try to avoid the temptation to compare our careers to other people pretty regularly, because you're just faced with the world of publicists and the world of like top 10 lists at the end of the year, where you're just like, you know, this has nothing to do with my life, you know, with what I do, with the art that I make. But you know, I think in a way that you maybe the first step would be to ignore what's going on and the success that other people are having.
You know, man, the closest I get to it is just as, you know, has been through doing these podcasts, and it's just like, you know, in good ones, like I feel like the one we're having now, where I look at the time and an hour's gone by, and it feels like time's folded in, and that's been my experience with it is been one of like just perpetually trying to step out of the way, and as much as I can get out of the way of the thing, the more that I get to feel that what I would consider a kind of contact with something, and that contact with something definitely is the most fulfilling thing that I know of in the world. And I know that the more I'm out of contact with that thing through laziness, that is when I tend to get the most depressed, because it's just what do I have? I have fucking color changing LED lights and I play StarCraft. It's like, what is that? That's nothing, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes I think that I'm going to try to answer your question over the course of the rest of this thing, but like sometimes I think that the whole like deterministic aspect of my sort of narcissistic side is that like maybe I'm only putting myself in this position to take on such responsibility because my personality wants to be in control of something, you know?
It's something I've always admired in you. And this thing, you've been doing it since we were in college together. You were obsessed since then. And
10 years before that too. But I mean, like, yeah, daily, like if everybody took acid, like I would leave for 5 hours to go do this,
Yes. And it was always something that, at the time I found it threatening, and now I just find it inspiring. It
seemed really selfish at the time. Like everybody is in this thing together, about to like go walk down, a path and dosing up, and I'd literally just like walk off. I'm like, sorry. Like it was an understanding that like if you were my friend, like then it sometimes it kind of just stopped, and I couldn't be your friend for a while. I had to go be by myself or something. It seemed like really, really selfish. And most people are only going to acknowledge that maybe it has some use if you find some success in your records in cellophane in a store and someone giving you money and you're on a stage and people are cheering and all that shit. But then in the end, that doesn't even make that much of a difference either, because people still treat you like shit and don't understand why you even do what you do and find it vaguely annoying that you're obsessed with something.
Right. Yes. Well, that's the concept of success itself, as it's commonly understood, is maybe one of the most satanic principles in the world. But because it's just, all of the stuff that you see in the media portraying success is inevitably like, a lot of people think when they watch the Academy Awards and they see those people walking down the red carpet in nice clothes, in their minds they think that's it. That's what that's what it looks like. That's what it is. And it's interesting how you can tell a lot about yourself by your concept of what success is, or by how much you care about success, how much you're driven to succeed, and how much you want to experience success in the form of some medal or an award that gets put around your neck that is a fleeting, temporary thing. That is not success. Success is, I don't know, maybe success is the Western version of enlightenment. It's a word that you're not even supposed to use or think about, because it's so, the moment you categorize success, you're knocked off the path.
Yeah, I think the real sickening aspect of that whole thing is that you've got these people, worshiping and really spending like a massive portion of their life focused on that kind of red carpet dream or whatever you're talking about. But when they see the amount of work and dedication that it takes for those actual three-dimensional people that have to go through the situation to get there, they're like repulsed by the fact that you actually have to work and do shit and care, to actually arrive anywhere. And that's why I think a lot of like celebrity types don't really treat, I guess, fans like shit. And I don't agree with any of that at all. But like, it's because they're just like, oh, you're just objectifying. They can see that you're just objectifying me in this light that you imagine, but you don't respect me. You don't care about me as a person, and you're just you're really in a childish pursuit of something that ultimately truly does not exist, because this red carpet and these lights ultimately don't exist. It's the fucking work that really exists, and you hate that. You would never do it. You don't respect it,
Yeah, but I think that there's a where I think what's happening, what you're talking about, is in the worst case, these people differentiate themselves from other people based on this idea of their own success, or the perception of their fans or the people of the world. But I think in the best case, the really great ones that you run into, man, are always the most, they just seem so fucking humble, because they understand that even in the work, there's still just the work is getting out of the way. And
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, the work is not work like, oh, I'm hauling bricks up a fucking hill. It's like, just as long as you can, try to sit still and let this fucking thing voice itself through you. And don't get your little fucking human fingers stuck in the thing. Just let it do its thing and get over the idea that you're going to be the entire team. Let this goddamn thing be Kobe Bryant. You're just, you know what I mean? You don't get to be that. You know, you are part of it. You get to facilitate it. And this is why it's like you keep hearing the term in mysticism, the term servant gets used an awful lot, because and surrender is another word that gets used an awful lot. And it's this idea of like, look, just serve the thing. Just be happy with that. Why do you want to be the fucking, I say fucking too much. Why do you want to be the owner of the mansion? Why do you want to be the richest person in the world? Just serve that person. Just be a servant to this transcendent force as much as you can, and everything will work out then. You know, and that. Yeah. So I think that people who've experienced that generally are less. When you were talking about people being shitty to fans, all I could think about is goddamn Bob Dylan and his fucking embarrassing interviews where he thinks that he really thinks that he's Jesus. Like, and he's troubled by these reporters asking. You could ask him any question. You could ask him the most brilliant question or the dumbest question, and they'll both be met with the same level. Why would you ask me that, man? What do you want me to be, man?
I know what you're talking about completely, because I mean I've seen it on like every side of the coin. But first of all, I've never actually seen. I don't think I've actually seen interviews with him where he's. I kind of know what you're talking about, but if you want, send me or post the actual interview you're thinking of, because
somebody wanted his autograph and he's like, I don't have time, man. I'm in my limo.
Well, I read something recently, and I don't know where it was. It was probably from some really shallow place, but I read something recently where someone was saying that famous people, I found this pretty interesting. It might be a little simplistic, but that famous people have kind of two personalities as they get famous. They have the really sweet, like inclusive part of them that's like learned so much from what they've dedicated themselves to and treats people really, really kindly if you meet them in that light. But then they have like this defensive entity, and that's the asshole guy, you know, and that entity basically susses out or sums up if you're coming from a fucked up place, like it, as you know, when you come up to someone like super quickly and you start talking to them, like you've already been having this conversation about something, they have no idea what you're talking about. And they kind of realize that you're trying to objectify them for some kind of weird, strange purpose that comes back to their own narcissism. Like you'll notice a lot of times when somebody comes up to you after a show or something, sometimes you meet the sweetest people you've ever met in your life and you want to go hang out with them. Or sometimes you met a guy, you meet a guy that everything comes back to, yeah, that's so funny because I was doing this thing the other day and I was just, you know, like everything keeps coming back to this weird, over-narrated internal monologue that they have about themselves. And like, in a way, you're just like this weird fixture of something that like fits into their life that like is part of a larger objectification of all things and all people that comes back to their, like, they're the star. Universe.
This is where probably my own Jesus complex comes in. Because when that happens, all I think is, okay, this person is needing this right now. I don't know why they need it. I don't understand exactly what it is, but I imagine that they are always doing this to everyone around him. And I imagine that everyone around them is resisting this in some way. So for whatever reason, this person has decided to make me important. And so that means that I have the opportunity to have a placebo effect here through some kind of, and this is where it gets hippy dippy, but I think, all right, just through a sense of intention, if I can, as an exercise in this moment, and goddamn, after a show, it's easy, but in life, I fail at this so often, but just to give unconditional positive regard to this being who's going through this automatic, robotic kind of thing, where they're using me as a kind of launching board to do this seizure thing. Maybe if I have the intention of just really embracing it and accepting it, it could spin him around and maybe get him out of that. Maybe I can throw a monkey wrench in there somehow. Maybe there's a way to throw a little something in there to get them skipping off that track into another track. I don't know.
I totally agree, and I think that I end up staying with those people like longer after the show and stuff. Just out of some sort of feeling of obligation to also, like, myself as a young kid who came up to people and they had no idea what the fuck I was talking about and found me totally insane. I kind of want to like bear out the process or something with the person, because we are in a relationship together, and I totally agree with you that there's no reason to be anything other than totally positive. I sometimes I think people have their own problems though, and I mean, I generally just try to stay away from the entertainers or musicians that are clearly fucked up, because it's just it's so dark, but like,
it's dark as fuck.
I think that sometimes just people have their own problems, especially if you're like in a car like the Beatles and people are tipping your car over and lighting on fire or something. I mean, there comes a battle point probably, but I mean, I've never been in that position. It hasn't really existed for me, but I do think that there's a possibility that there's an element of what Bob Dylan is trying to do is he's kind of saying, no, like, fuck your silly little childish idea that like you want to collect me and you want to collect famous people and you want to collect us like action figures and like I want you to be a grown up and I want you to have your own life and develop your own way of thinking. Like, I don't want to keep you in this mindset. I don't think it comes off well, but I think there's a possibility that he just doesn't want to be another product and like go into that system. It might come from a place that was originally kind of good, but comes out kind of fucked up. I'm not sure.
Well, I just think that there's you're kind of gonna, I think when people get to some certain level, who knows, man, I can't say. It's not fair for me to cast stones, man. Because, I'm sure that when you get to that level where everywhere you go, there's this swirl of humanity around you just trying to touch the hem of your robe, hoping that some kind of healing energy will come through this interaction into their lives. Eventually, you're going to run out of juice because you got to piss. If you're Bob Dylan, you got to go put your vocal cords in a dehydrator so that you can hit that specific sound. That guy's got the most annoying voice.
A pretty girl walking down the street. It's no different to be objectified in that situation.
But
where
again,
a construction worker just wants to fuck you and doesn't care about who you are. I mean, like, have some respect.
That sucks, though. That sucks.
Can tell that you're just like wanting to get closer to this idea of fame for yourself, but you're not speaking to them as if they're even a human being or even really listening to what they say. Now, I've been on all those sides. I've been that little kid just like talking shit to some like person I looked up to that really, looking back, it made no fucking sense. But I was so inundated into this like world of thinking like who knows, like when I was 14, like what kind of shit I thought was important within like the hardcore scene or something, just like fucking foolish idiocy, you know? So we all go through those phases, and there's probably a time to tell somebody to shut the fuck up. But I don't I don't like encourage that. And I would never do.
But you know, I gotta say though, man, there's nothing more repugnant to me than when, you know, I was just the other day, I was hanging out with some people, and there was a pretty girl, and that we go into this place, and the pretty girl looks around, and she's like, "Ugh, look at all these lonely dudes." And it was like, something about it was so stupid and vile and empty. And it's like, yeah, probably they are. You fucking asshole. Like, they probably are. Like, what have you done to put yourself in this position where you're actually going to smirk at people's loneliness because you have facial symmetry? Like, it's, you know,
a pretty person like that can be the most unattractive thing in the world. That's like, it's like fucking winning the lottery and walking out with the money and looking around at everybody and be like, Jesus Christ, like, how did you guys get so fucking poor? It's like so shallow and ridiculous.
That is why, and I don't mean to keep going over it, but like, this is why I think that in almost all cases, barring a few where a complete lunatic wants to give you like a raw piece of chicken or something after a show, there is no excuse to be anything but it's part of the job. It's part of the work. There's no excuse but to be extra courteous to these people. And
I totally agree.
You know,
I totally agree.
And so when because it's like, you motherfucker, you through hard work and talent and a little bit of luck have managed to experience a rarefied form of existence that is so beautiful and wonderful. God damn it. You've got to be kind to these people who are clamoring around you, because they just are projecting what's good about them onto you. And the moment, you know what I mean? The moment you disrupt that, you're going to fucking send these people into like, and I know the idea is like, I'm going to teach them to be themselves. I'm going to tough love these motherfuckers into learning that whatever, fuck tough love. Fuck tough. I'm so sick of tough goddamn love. Give me love, you know, not tough love. That's such an annoying fucking concept. So anyway, I don't know why we got into that.
Well, I kind of take that. I kind of take it back. Like, is there ever a time where the word "shut the fuck up" actually is deserved? Probably not, actually. Maybe unless someone's being like violent or something.
I mean, I think that you just have. I mean, I just think you have such an opportunity, man. When you get it, when you're performing, and when you're like in, you know, where people are listening to you, that it's like, you know, you gotta. It's the same thing as what we were talking about with death. You only get to die once. You get this one fucking chance to exit the universe. How are you going to do it? You know, like, there's so many opportunities there to do this kind of interesting, to leave in a novel way. In the same way, if you do find yourself in a rarefied life, there's such a chance there to do something novel. And I'll tell you, man, there's nothing more novel that I've ever encountered in my life than when you run into somebody who's giving you unconditional love.
Yeah,
that'll spin you. When you run into that, it's like, what? Who the fuck are you? Like, what if I come in I would rather come in contact with a being emanating pure unconditional love than an alien. It's weirder than an alien. And so anyway, but I want to get to, I don't think you answered the question, which is some people want to access these elemental powers. Some people who are artists and listening to this and are thinking, yeah, maybe I am just scratching the surface. Is there something they can do? I mean, I know that not everybody's going to be some prodigy, you know, since a very young age, creating awesome music. I know that's a rare incarnation, man, and I think you have it, and I think there's something so beautiful in it. But I also like to imagine that somebody out there listening in their 50s, 40s, someone who never really went for it, I like to think that, shit, man, there's something that you could do it at any time.
Well, I'd feel like I was being dishonest if both of us didn't admit that, like, doing acid wasn't a massive part of deconstruction and kind of sacrificing yourself to the beginning of like a new type of confusion that in the end, becomes resolved in whole new forms of individuation.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's the first time I've ever heard it, but you're damn right. There is a sacrificial aspect of taking LSD. You are definitely putting a nice part of yourself, not nice, but a familiar part of yourself on a chemical altar and dissolving that thing, for sure. So psychedelics, I agree, man. I think that's one way to get in there for sure.
I think that when you're tripping and you kind of, this happens when you're high too, but personally for me, like not in any way near as profound, but like when you're tripping, you kind of stare into like the corner of a room. You get lost in the corner of a room in the carpet or something, which sounds hilarious or stupid, but you kind of go into tunnels and layers of thinking, which is very visual, but you go into layers of sensation and experiential levels that you obviously were never ever aware of, especially because you never go in that corner of the room and you never look at the carpet. But like you go through things that, as you begin to pull the lens back and slowly sober up and kind of return to your normal pattern of seeing things and thinking, you're left with this indelible sense that this stuff is that access point is there all the time, and that your perception of everything all the time is only a representation of, trillions of potentialities beyond that sort of screen that you're looking at. We spend all our time sort of using and abusing the earth, or like just thinking, well, of course, there's, my house is made of wood, and that comes from a tree. You don't have to process this stuff all the time, but as you're tripping, you start to, not only does your ego self disintegrate in the process, but you travel into areas that you just leave you with a sense later on that whole new levels of processing reality at all times in every dimensional sense are possible. So if that kind of invitation to chaos or something, to make you make up your own mind about the most fundamental assumptions that you make all the time, I mean, that's a perfect starting point to open yourself to the spirit of creativity, or just the need to maybe find out what you have to say that's particularly unique. I mean, I think that LSD was maybe the central agent to me starting to understand why I was in love with sound and my own experience with it, and even your sort of what you were saying earlier about excavation. I remember being 16 years old and walking down the street of Boston in the middle of the city in its most disgusting areas, and just and tripping really hard, and having that city horrify me so completely, but within just the wind and the vibrations of the energy coming off the buildings, like these kind of mechanistic chanting kind of sounds coming to me in words, and me realizing, like, if I could make music like this, this. If I could represent like this kind of eternal Morse code that's coming at me, I could accomplish something totally alien and fascinating. That's something I'd never heard before. And I kind of like, at the time I knew I didn't have the tools to do it. And I knew that I literally couldn't make it with what I was hearing with a 4-track and a bass guitar and a bass drum and snare drum. But it was through insights like that I make music now, and try to represent the kinds of horror or hallucination or, actual tangible enlightenment moments that I felt, and I think that either of us would be dishonest if we didn't start by talking about LSD.
Absolutely. And this is also when I've had Raghu Marcus, who was a disciple of Neem Karoli Baba, Ram Dass's guru, they all point to that. Ram Dass points to everyone. So many people point to that as the starting off place. It's not the finishing place, but it's definitely the starting off place. Yeah, without that substance, I'm not sure what would have happened to me.
It's if somebody's listening that's never taken it, it's fine. It's no big deal. It's not like there's like this massive separation between these ways of thinking, but it's just that moment when he's on the couch and he sees himself projected in front of himself in the beginning of Be Here Now, and he sees himself disintegrate.
Yeah.
He sees everything he owns and all of his ego projections disintegrate, but he sees himself disintegrate, goes through a death experience, and then acknowledges that he's completely fine and that he still exists, and that what's remaining is probably what's actually him. Just that death and rebirth moment alone just proves you that there's a spiritual beginning in sacrificing yourself by basically erasing everything you had previously assumed.
Interestingly, he was on psilocybin, synthetic psilocybin, I think, and not LSD when that happened. But it is the psychedelic state. It's the kind of ecstatic. It's like psychedelics give us an access to an ecstatic, intense, primordial state. And I think that really what you're talking about, and I think what you're talking about is contacting an energy and listening to it and then conveying that energy into the world as much as you can. And that it's listening. A lot of it's listening. It's a weird word, but yeah, you have to be able to listen for it, hear it. And sometimes you can't hear it with the din of modern life swirling around your head. So the psychedelic will cause that temporarily to be muted or accentuated or abnormalized. So it's no longer part of the rhythm of your existence anymore. And once that smog clears, you see something through it. And that thing that you see through it is probably different for every single individual. And some people try to convey it through music, some people through art, some people through action. But after you come in contact with it, you definitely want to articulate it.
Well, yeah, listening is the ultimate word. I mean, it's totally being a student. It's having focus, paying attention, sacrifice. It has all those things in it. And in music, listening is God. Listening is everything. You listening is more what you're doing than playing or even participating. Your listening is the heart of divining, like a divining rod or something, like exactly where something wants to go. And if you can't be with where that thing wants to go, you're just another person making a bunch of noise,
God damn it, Emil. This is a heavy podcast. Man, it just takes such guts, because the problem is you'll hear it and you won't believe it. You'll hear it and you won't trust yourself to know, yeah, that's it. And you won't have the guts to articulate that thing, and you'll start articulating something that you think people want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the trap, and that's why the courageousness comes from like there's two steps: hearing it and then having the courage to purely articulate it. Because some people hear that fucking thing and then they turn it into a Katy Perry song.
Well, I think if there is one kind of message I think you could send to people is that, if you're worried about people liking you, or if you're coming from a place of needing attention or needing love, the secret is to art is that like the more unique what you make is, the more
the more you what? Say it again. Say that again. The more you what? I couldn't hear it. It faded out for a second.
The more unique what you're making is,
yes.
Like the more bizarre or outlandish or like just unusual it is, the more it'll actually be commodifiable by law, by reason, because people will have to come to you to get that thing. They won't be able to get it at other places.
That's
so
right.
All the people making things that are somehow driven by the need to assimilate themselves into these kind of commodifiable sort of paradigms are, I think, making an initial horrible mistake, because if the more you can drive down inside yourself and find something odd about yourself or awkward, those are the things that everyone is going to remember and be like totally refreshed by, and in music, you see it. It's right in front of everybody's face. You see Sonic Youth and you see Fugazi, you see these bands that didn't sound like other bands, and they're massive,
Right.
It's really funny to me that people don't understand that being original pays off the best.
Well, it's just because it's so much easier to imitate than it is to listen, and I think that's probably ultimately people just are lazy.
I think that's probably at the heart of why the world is largely so sad most of the time is laziness.
Man, this is fucking awesome, man. I gotta wrap it up. I love this podcast. Very inspirational, man. Now I feel like now I just want to write. Now I just want to rub body paint all over my body and roll around on the floor and scream.
Where are you going to be there? I'm going to be there in maybe around just right in the middle of February, like February 20th or something.
Hold on, let me look. It's so funny how we're eternally cursed to never see each other. We're like Lady Hawk. Remember that movie? All right.
I'm looking up my dates.
I'm gonna be.
Looks like I'll be there on.
I'm gonna be in Toronto on the 21st, and then the 21st to the 25th, I'm performing in Toronto, and then and then somewhere in there, my brother's getting married, and I might have to go to a wedding. When are you going to be in town?
I'll be there on the 18th. That's not bad.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Are you performing?
Looks like Ohm is playing the Center for Arts in Eagle Rock.
Rad. I know where that is. I've been there. I've been there. It's awesome.
You know that place?
Yeah, I've been there. If it's the place I'm thinking about, it's really cool. Can you give me backstage passes?
Of course, man. All access, buddy.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Maybe we'll have a big Duncan Trussell Family Hour meetup at that show. That would be
for sure.
Blast.
Yeah. And then we'll keep talking about the other stuff we were talking about traveling together eventually.
Beautiful. Okay, cool. And your website, holysons.com?
Yeah, actually, you can copy me on the Twitter. I joined just because of you.
You're on Twitter. What's your Twitter?
I think it's Emil Amos because nobody else has that.
At Emil Amos at Twitter. Follow Emil on Twitter. Okay, I'll see you around, bud. Hare Krishna.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, that was Emil Amos. You like this podcast? Why not go and leave a nice comment on iTunes? Thanks for listening, everybody. Here is one of Emil's tracks called Slave Morality from his album Decline of the West.